Welcome to the Core podcast. This one's a little bit special because it's just hosted by me. This collection of fantastic podcasts comes from a load of amazing, influential women in tech. I'm really excited to share this with you throughout October. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to the latest episode of our podcast, and today I'm really excited to have Stevie in from Abnormal. We're actually doing a series of podcasts talking to female leaders, female colleagues that are within the cybersecurity industry, because it's not really, I guess, I don't know, when I went to school, wasn't the industry I thought I'd go into. I don't know if it's on every little girl's tick list, or I don't think there's a Barbie that you can buy that helps you in cybersecurity. So Stevie, could you give us a little bit of an intro on yourself, where you work right now, how you got into cybersecurity?
Absolutely. I mean, unsurprisingly, I didn't grow up desperate to be in IT either.
No.
I actually got into the industry via a summer job.
Okay.
So I did a law degree and I needed some money while I was applying for training contracts.
Okay.
And just never left. And that was 10 years ago now. So I joined a cybersecurity reseller as the renewal specialist as a temp.
Okay.
And worked my way through there, found sales, decided I liked it and never went back to law. My parents were so happy.
Oh, happy?
No.
Oh no. I was going to say, most parents, if you're going to go do a law degree, would probably be like, I mean, I'm imagining Legally Blonde right now, but I'm sure.
I'm not sure I could have pulled off the dresses,
No.
but I could try. I'll try it InfoSec.
And I know you through a relationship with Abnormal, and you've been there 3 months, 4 months?
Nearly 2.
Okay. Oh, I feel like you've been there a lot longer. And so how did you land that? Like, we all know at Quarter Cloud it's a very exciting tech. Is that how you heard about it, or? It
was actually a colleague of mine. So I was at Okta before. Okay. I was at Okta for 4 years, looking after the channel for UKI there. And then a colleague of mine in the US from Okta moved over to Abnormal.
Okay.
And he was just having so much fun. He spoke to me about it 3 or 4 times over about a 6-month period, and it was just never sort of the right time. And then Chris Martin was launching Abnormal, and it was just lots of noise. It was really exciting. So I thought I'll speak to him. I worked with him before.
Okay.
So I thought if Chris is doing it, there must be something exciting.
Yeah.
And just the passion from there that I heard, the growth, the numbers, the excitement, this whole new industry, new technology. I just couldn't say no.
And why is Abnormal so different from the other techs on the market? Just like lightly, I know you're not technical, but why are you seeing so much success of it with your customers compared to?
I've heard some interesting, what's the word when you comparisons? I've heard some interesting comparisons from Abnormal and other techs in the market. So email security is not new.
No.
But the way that we're approaching this is looking at technology that's been in place for 20 years and hasn't really changed, when the market around it has been completely flipped on its head.
Yeah.
So that's why Abnormal is different. And a lot of people, when they're looking at Abnormal, they're sort of likening us to CrowdStrike, for example, who, endpoint security was not different.
Yeah.
It's been around for ages, but the way that CrowdStrike were doing it was different.
Yeah.
The way with Vectra, I know that you work with Vectra, Chris did. Same sort of thing, network security, been around forever. But the industry changes so quickly, and the way that we work changes so quickly with digital transformation and moving to the cloud.
Yeah.
But we're still using a secure email gateway that was created 20 years ago. So now is the time. And there's a few players ratifying that this is the right approach and it is the right time. And it just seemed like there wasn't anyone doing it well enough.
Which makes it exciting when you're going into a new tech. So, for you, in your opinion, in cybersecurity, what sort of challenges? Obviously, there's the email side of things, but you've been in cybersecurity quite a long time. What do you think the challenges are remaining the same? Do you think cybersecurity challenges are evolving? Like, how have you seen any patterns over the years or do you think they, like you said, email is always going to be a problem? It's just how we flip it on its head.
I do think email will always be a problem. I think that the scariest thing for me is the merging of our personal and our work. So, we have the same phone.
Rapidly.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wasn't not old enough, luckily, to have been, at the desktop stage where I came in. Actually, that is a lie. My first computer was stuck to the desk when I started at Nebulous. So I didn't have a laptop, I don't think.
I think I've always had a laptop. I think we're similar age. I can't think. I know at uni there were still just solid computers and things like that, but it wasn't But yeah, I think we're just at the brink, aren't we, of laptop?
Yeah. So it's everything's merging. Like I've got my personal and my work email. I've got my banking apps, but I've also got my Slack. Everything's on my phone.
Yeah.
What I'm scared of, or I think what everyone should be conscious of more than scared of, is that these things are coming closer and closer together. And as it merges, how many photos do you send and you think, oops, shouldn't have sent that? How often are you in a WhatsApp group and maybe you've had a wine or two and you send the wrong picture, you send it to the wrong group, you very quickly delete it. But that's out there, that's gone. And if we're making mistakes like that, when we are people in the industry, imagine what you can do when you're really, really trying and you are a malicious actor that is trying really hard and using a lot of processing power and a lot of knowledge and a lot of technical understanding to actually be successful in these huge attacks. So I think it's everywhere. It's the fact that everything is everywhere.
Yeah,
and
I don't know about you, but I think because we are in the industry, we are probably a little bit more cautious, wary. We do have little things like, is that phishing? Is that a real person? Well, I don't know about how your thoughts about your friends and other colleagues in different industries don't necessarily have that thought process. They don't think, that could potentially be a phishing, or that's definitely from Jane from HR. I don't know. I don't know how you. I think I always do second guess things. I do just go, hang on, is that right? Where I feel some of my friends in different industries wouldn't do the same. I don't know if you feel that the same about other colleagues, or when you're having a glass of wine with your mates and you bring something up and they're like, you're so paranoid. And I'm like, I'm not that paranoid.
Definitely. I mean, I assume the worst. And it's great if it's real.
Yeah.
But when there was the big, the ones that came out, what's the delivery service? It's now, I think it's Every now.
Oh, Hermes,
yeah.
Hermes, however you pronounce it, yeah.
There was a really, really, really good impersonation of them. A load of emails going around for Hermes, and I was screenshotting them and sending them all to my friends, thinking, please be careful. Because, ASOS, everything that we use quite regularly
comes from them.
Uses those. So it's terrifying. And we were talking about earlier, it's the vendors, who are you working with? It's not necessarily ASOS that's been compromised, but if Hermes, who ASOS are using, they've been compromised, and there's this huge chain of people in everything that we do.
But we're trusting, aren't we? Like, it's the same with the Royal Mail and things like that. And I know also during COVID, there was horrible phishing emails that were going out, or text messages saying that you need your vaccine. It was fake, and people were filling it in and putting their NHS number and all these things, thinking they were booking stuff when it was actually. And I guess, I think people use something like the pandemic where our guard is down, and nothing was normal, was it, to do it? So they find things that you're normal in your life for you to accept, and Hermes or Envy was a great example of that.
And if you're I guess a good person, you kind of think, I'm not going to exploit that. I'm not going to go after the old people, the sick people who are going to click on the vaccination links. But unfortunately, the bad guys don't care.
No.
So they are going to do exactly that.
Do you see things, looking at cybersecurity and threats and things like that? I think you've highlighted that because our worlds are becoming quite blended, home and life. There's also the metaverse that's coming, and we're potentially going to be virtual as well. What do you think how it going to change in the next 5 years? Do you think it's going to have to be like an educational thing that we're taught about this? Do you think it's going to be, because I know there's a new GCSE on climate change, do you think it will go that way, that it's just part of learning maths? And do you think it could go that way? I think
it's two parts. I think education is so important, and I do think, when I think about my grandma and what she would do, and having her passwords on the fridge, that education is definitely better for younger people, but it needs to be improved more. But there's only so much education that's going to help. It's automation, it's AI. It's, at the end of the day, the only things that are going to be better at protecting us is AI. It's computer behaviour, it's computer learning. So I think we need to have a dual approach where we've got AI, we've got these security organisations who are backed by huge AI machines, and we've got education. They have to work hand in hand. I think that's the only way we're going to stand a chance of being secure in a digital world.
And I know both of us said when we went to uni and school and stuff like that, cybersecurity for me, I don't even think there was a course or a choice. I wouldn't even have considered it to be actually, if it had been put in front of me to take it as a degree. I think we both know that, and being it's quite a male-dominated industry that we're both in, do you think there's somewhere from schooling that could encourage people? Because I actually, I sit in the marketing side of it, but it's actually quite James Bondy. It is actually kind of a sexy market if you understand and look under the hood of it in some ways. Do you think there's a way that we could get more females into the industry? Do you think that's more of us talking about it? Do you think it comes in from school? How do you think is a way of encouraging people to get involved?
I think a big part is educating that it's not all just about the technical, the ones and zeros.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge part. We need a lot more female SEs. We need a lot more female techies. And that's not something I can influence.
No.
So please come.
Yeah, please get involved.
But I think it's such a huge industry. I mean, we've been trying to hire female salespeople. We've been trying to have a really diverse approach to this.
Yeah.
But we've had barely any CVs or any applications from females. And it's really, really hard. And that's for a sales job. And Abnormal's not a difficult technology to wrap your head around.
No.
So if we can't find sales women who want to sell a technology that has a really big demand, is growing really quickly, is going to be huge, and is easy to talk about, then that kind of highlights for me how big the problem is, that the women just aren't out there. So I think spreading that education, maybe going into other industries and saying, you're good at sales, you can do that, try IT, as well as doing the bottom-down approach in school.
I think this comes into something that we were looking at a lot of reports when planning, doing these interviews, and an interesting stat, which may be why people aren't applying for jobs, but statistically, women will only likely to apply for a job if they meet 100% of the criteria, where men will apply if they only hit 60%.
I've seen that. That's amazing. Men will leap, women won't.
Women won't. And I think that's it's interesting, really, because also when I got into this role, it was a bit of actually just someone knew James. They were like, I think you're going to get on really well. I literally did it off of whim and thought, I've worked a little bit. I'd done some work for Software One and Fujitsu, and I touched my toe in it, but not as deep as I'm in it now. And I was really nervous. And even in my interview, I was really like, I don't know much. And I really downplayed myself, I have to say, in the interview. I was quite open that I'm good at marketing, but I downplayed that I didn't know cybersecurity or tech, or I was a bit like, I'm not very technical, and I downplayed myself. Do you find that across the industry, or is it just me, or do you agree with that stat? Do you think that as women we are a little bit nervous of going for something or going into a new industry?
Unfortunately, there aren't enough women for me to be able to say that I see it across the industry, but across my friends, across my family, across my life in general, and myself, I absolutely think that's the case. The amount of jobs I've had to really been pushed to go for. But also imposter syndrome. That's something that I feel
we all deal with, Yeah,
and it's like, okay, I'm in this job. Am I doing it well? Am I about to get fired? Am I hitting the standards that I should be? So you never go for that next level because you're never perfect at the one you're doing.
No.
And it's not until you sort of stand back and think, actually, I nailed that. Why was I so worried for so long? But at that point, you're in a new job that you've got imposter syndrome with again.
Yeah.
So I think it is maybe something that we need to change with the way that we do interviews, or the way that we approach questions, write job adverts. Because if we're saying that the way that we do interviews now scares off women because they're not hitting every single point, then we need to look at that. How many LinkedIn job adverts do you see where it's like you need 15 years experience? Do you? Yeah. Why?
And I think I agree with you on the sales, especially in a sales role. And I probably think in marketing, if you're a really good marketeer, you don't really need a technical background. You need to be able to understand the technology and sell it, but you need to be a really good marketeer. And I don't know how you feel from a sales perspective. If you're a really good salesperson and you understand the product you're selling and the pain point that it solves, you're not the person to do the heavy technical uplifting. That's why we have technical people in the role. Yeah. So, and I've learned so much. I don't think you can learn any more than being on the job. I don't know about you, I mean, when I left uni, I thought I knew everything, and I got a degree. And they do pat you on the back quite a lot, you've got a degree now, you can get every job you want. And gosh, didn't I fall from grace of getting into my job and getting people tea and answering the phone. There was a lot of learning. So I don't know about you, I think there's a lot you can learn. And because this industry evolves all the time, I don't think you can say that you can come in and be like, you've learned it.
And if you do, then you're not the right person for the job.
Right.
I don't think. I think if you're not constantly evolving and you can't deal with change, you shouldn't be in the job anyway.
Yeah.
That thing that you said about, you just touched on, is it skills or is it you're a good marketeer?
Yeah.
I see a lot of salespeople in my job. Obviously, I spend most of my life with salespeople at different partners.
Yeah.
And I think I can tell a good salesperson before they've started talking about a product, because it's not about the product. It's how they interact with people.
Yeah.
And I think we need more female skills in that, some of the more soft skills.
The empathy.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I like to call car salesmen out there.
Yeah.
Obviously not selling cars, and apologies to any car salesmen that happen to be listening. But,
or that
yeah,
stereotype, isn't there?
yeah, it's that kind of bullshit, buy this, it's great, go on, almost like a bullying tactic into buying something you don't really want.
Yeah.
And then you get the salespeople that just sit and listen. They understand, and I think you can tell them from a mile off when they're offering you a cup of tea. And so I think that's where we need to encourage women to come in and join, because you can learn tech. You can't learn to be a good salesperson.
Yeah, or a good listener. And I
No.
think as women, we're good at that. My next kind of thing that I was thinking, I don't know about you, but I feel like maybe women more, but I feel like we genuinely juggle a lot more hats. I mean, we were talking about the food shop earlier. I think women have got a lot of that going on, and I think we are very good at jumping in from work and with your partner or what you're doing like that. I feel personally that's a strength of us as a female, because we are good at multitasking, we are flipping on the different hats and stuff. How have you dealt with that as your career and as a woman, and having to be, I don't know, do you feel that you have to flip a different hat or have a different persona depending on what situation you're in, whether you're being a salesperson? Do you feel like as a woman, do we do that more? Or
when I was younger, I thought that was me being fake.
Yeah,
and I thought it was a real letdown in my personality.
Yes, I get that.
And now I've realised that it's so important. I mean, if I'm having a conversation with someone in marketing versus having a conversation with an SDR or I don't know, sometimes I do customer facing things still, so I might be talking to a CISO. They are not just different conversations, they are different personas.
Yeah.
And you have to fit to be around people. If you want to be, I guess, engaging,
Yeah.
you've got to mix that, and you've got to swap those personality types, or adjust them, not swap them.
Yeah.
One of the things that an old boss said to me once was that he would sit and watch and wait for me to drop a plate, because I was spinning so many things and trying to do so many things.
Yeah.
I remember how gutted I was the first time I did, because women can't fail. We can't fail in this industry because we're already being waited. People are waiting for us to do that
anyway. Yeah.
And I think that's a negative for us, because
We're on a back step already.
Yeah, there's so many men that I work with and that I know and that I adore who would go, oh, oops, I dropped that plate, pick up another one and carry on. Whereas I think as women, we maybe take it too personally.
I completely agree, and we take that home, and then we swallow it and think, oh, I've made the mistake, and it's again the imposter syndrome thing. And then I feel like, I don't know, I mean, I'm stereotyping, but men seem to have a much move on, it's okay, like, I don't know, stiff upper lip, maybe that's something about it where we as women to kind of absorb it a lot more.
You can almost see it in friendship groups, and again, this is a stereotype, but how many, you have a bit of an argument on a girls' night out and it drags, it's awkward, trying to fix it, I'm sorry, and it just creates a bit of an atmosphere. I don't know many of my guy mates who've ever actually fallen out, because it's just a joke, move on.
Yeah.
And it's kind of taking that mentality where we just hold on to too much. And
I was reading Karen Brady's book recently, because obviously she's very much in the male industry. It was football and all the things that came out of that, and it came up that she was emotionless. Like, someone interviewed, a female emailed her and interviewed and said that she had no emotion and that she was emotionless. And she was on with an interview with Stephen Bartlett and he said, oh, how does that make you feel? And she was like, well, I think how people read that was that I was cold-hearted and I had no emotion. And she said what I actually meant was what I've learned from working in a male industry is that men are very, very black and white, and you don't add loads of emotion around it or drag other bits into it. You just have to be very straightforward, and you have to stick from that. And if you're firing someone, you have to do it and you have to take the board. And she said apparently on her early days she had to fire someone, and she said that the lady was absolutely lovely, she couldn't do it, so she asked someone male in her job, senior, to do it for her. And actually he started it in and then brought her in and got her to do it, and he said that was the best learning curve from me from an age of 23, that is, if I've got to do something emotional and it's my choice and my decision, I've got to own it and take the emotion out of it. And she said that's where the interview just kind of didn't play in her favour. They're saying that she was emotionless, and she said that's not what I was saying. She said I'm able to put that emotion in a box and do my job. She's like, it doesn't mean it doesn't affect me. It doesn't mean that I'm not a good human being or I don't love my children. She said I just know how to put it in boxes for the right situation. And I think sometimes
separate work and play.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that can be hard for women, and us learning how to do that. I don't know how you feel about those in the situations. It's learning it all the time.
Awful at it. I'm so awful. I mean, good news, please let me deliver it all.
Yeah,
bad news, I really struggle. There was a woman I used to work with who was similar to that. She was just absolutely phenomenal. We'd sit down for a meeting and she'd be all business, get through this. And if there was any, I love a tangent. Any tangents bring me straight back in. She wasn't going to do it, and she was just all business. And then the second you left that room, she was this warmth, lovely, I guess just homely type personality. I don't think I ever want to have those two total different types.
Right.
But the way that she was able to separate the emotion
and
is huge.
And some of the best women that I've ever, like you said, going back to the listening thing, I think when they've really nailed it is that they can listen, they absorb, they take the information. And I know I'm a bit of a waffler when I'm trying to get my point across. But I've had a few senior people above me, women that I really liked, and they could just say what they needed to say in like 5 words or in just one sentence and get straight to the point because they'd sat there, they'd listened, they breathed, they were like, and now's my time, and could say it in like 5 words. And I always look up to those women like, God, I wish I could just breathe, own it. I think I get into a bit of a flap and be like, oh, I was going to say all the words and defend myself. And
and that's something that we all do.
Yeah.
There's a guy that I've worked with for years and years and years, and he said to me, I had to take something quite difficult to him before, and I made my point, and then I made it again, and I made it again, and he said, Stevie, you're closing a close. Stop, because you're actually hurting your point now.
Yeah,
and I'll always forget that now. Yeah, because you should have shut up 3 sentences ago.
Yeah, and I think, we are women and that we do like to talk. I think from one side it's really good because we like to build rapport and make friends, and then on other sides we need to learn how to stop. So I think that's a really good point. So I think we've gone round discussing strengths of women, why we'd love women to get involved. But also I think it's having those women in senior roles to aspire to be, right? Having women that we can see ourselves in or want to be in. And I think that is changing. I think there are more women on boards, but I think it's still, I think there's a statistic that, boards are still a little bit low on that and they're not actually hitting the 33% mark. What do you think could help empower women to take on senior roles or help them? I mean, I have my thoughts because I've had children, and I think that can have an impact on your career because you have to stay a step back, but not everyone has children, whether that's choice. How do you think there's ways of, do you think that's a confidence thing again, that we don't go for that job, or we don't, where do you think would help us as women to go higher up in our careers?
So I think once you're already in, one of the biggest things that I see really often is women thinking that they don't have a voice. They can't take that next step. And that for me is massive. And that comes from not just men, but other women. I quite often, I don't think that we hold each other up enough. And I think we need to do some education around different types of personalities, how different people work. And I've definitely been guilty of this. And it's something that I'm trying to develop myself. I'm a big believer in self-development.
Yeah, with you on that.
Is that if I find a woman who I think wasn't strong in that situation, and I use male, like sort of typical male words to describe them, and they didn't fit that, then should they be in that senior role? Which goes actually against everything I believe in, that we need lots of different personality types and lots of different types of people and different types of women. Yeah. So I think there's a huge education that we need to do around what does a good team look like? And you were talking earlier about skills gaps and analysis.
Yeah.
We almost need a life version of that. Who do we have? Where are we missing? Are we missing people with these personality traits?
Okay.
We need to go and find them. They're also important, whether that's in the boardroom, in a meeting, in the pub after work, whatever it is. We need to explain and educate to everyone, men and women, that the reasons why we need diversity, and not just, great, you've now got 50% women. Because if you've got a load of 50% women who are
very similar
bulldog type women, then that's no better.
And I think as women you can have bulldog type that don't actually lift the other women. I have been in roles where actually I mean, they used to say it was tough love because, you're in a male industry, but actually used to chip me even more because, you had your senior woman not empowering you. I think there's that thing, isn't it, a balance of women. We all know of our clique of friendship groups, there's one that's all slightly different on the table because that makes a harmonious blend. If all 5 of you are exactly the same type of women, then, like you said, a girls' night out would be horrific. So it's that, isn't it?
I want to go on that girls' night out.
Yeah. But like, is having that, even with the male personalities, not all men are the same, and I think they can get stereotyped of what their personality type is, but that's not how they would necessarily do it. I quite like that, of having a way of looking at the personality necessarily by then the gender of what they bring to the table.
Yeah. And whether that's, blind CVs or, like I said, I don't have the answers, just loads and loads of questions. Do we need a new way of interviewing?
But interesting, with your name being Stevie, have assumptions been made, or has that helped
Absolutely.
you? Right.
I loved it. When I was an account director or an account manager years ago, I used to absolutely love if I hadn't spoken to someone on the phone.
Yeah.
And before, I don't feel like LinkedIn was that big. I now wouldn't go to a meeting without checking someone's LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But the amount of times I would rock up and I would be sat in a waiting room waiting for someone, an IT special, an IT manager, IT security, whoever it was, coming to meet me. They would come out, look around, assume that the person had left, and walk away again. And I loved that. And then they'd have to sort of come back and go, "Oh, Steve," and it was always the confusion.
Yeah.
And my surname's Dennis as well, so
it's pretty powerful. Yeah.
But I loved it back then, and now it's just something different. And I do think actually it's probably it's made me a lot stronger.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't need to be a name
to
make sure that you can hold your own in a group of men. And I actually think if my name was something different, I wouldn't be as comfortable as I am in a group of really strong, loud voiced men.
Yeah. But I think it's also like, I don't remember about you, but I just remember school reports, and it was like always very chatty, very bossy, likes to show her opinion.
We wouldn't have been allowed to sit together at school.
No. That's fine. But actually, I remember those things and always feeling really guilty of my parents' evenings with my parents, of like, oh, sorry, I disagreed with that with the teacher, or I didn't see their eye to eye with that. But I think it's a language thing, because I think if women are in a senior role and if they're too voiced or they push their opinion, and language can be used of, oh, she's too bossy, and things like that. And having a young girl, a daughter of mine, and she's 5, I try to use language that isn't bossy or too chatty, or it's how can I say words of her of like, everyone's got an opinion, you've got to allow everyone to speak, but your voice is still valid. It's that kind of, I do think language plays a big part on women and how their reports or their teacher responds to them and stuff, and builds them up or can bring them down. I think it does start from the kind of grassroots point of how you see your voice. And you're saying actually having a male name helped you to feel more confident. I think probably having a female name and being blonde also had negative effects on me, because there was pre-assumptions made maybe about how educated I was, and that sort of thing. And it's bad, isn't it? But stereotypes still exist,
and that's all throughout society, right? We are in a tiny part of society, and that's what we're talking about. But we're never going to fix it until it's fixed.
No,
slightly larger scale. Yeah, but I think there are things that we can do just by not following the norm and not assuming that women are a certain way, they're in a certain box. But I think the only way we do that as well is by not judging each other for making mistakes. Yeah. That there are things that I've said and done over the years that I feel like I wouldn't ever say or do. Yeah. And that needs to be okay, because we need to be allowed to change.
What would be your top 5 tips for anyone aspiring to work in cybersecurity, and especially if they are a woman?
Go for it. Agreed. Number 1.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many different jobs. Have a look around. Yeah. So you don't have to understand what cybersecurity is to get into it. If you're good at something, there will be a job for you. Yeah. Jump in at the deep end. Mm-hmm. Absolutely do. And because that's where you learn, that's where it's exciting. And to be honest, if you're new to cybersecurity, it's all the deep end. Yeah. So go for it. Yeah. Find a mentor.
I'd agree with that. Find someone. Yeah, 100%.
I've had a couple over the years. I've made some good choices and some bad choices. It doesn't have to be one mentor that you stick with for your entire career. Nope. A lot of men that I know have stuck with that. And for the women, it seems to be that they move around a bit more and they have a couple of women they learn for, or men. You don't have to stick with your own gender. So find a mentor and speak honestly to them.
Yeah.
I guess learn to say no and push back is probably another big thing, because
you have to say yes to everything.
If you're joining the cybersecurity industry, you know that you're joining an industry that has its very set way of doing things. And if we want new people to come in, it's because we want the industry to change and evolve.
Amen.
So learn to say no, because people who've been in it for a long time, they need to hear no.
Yeah, and find different ways of doing it.
Yeah.
And perfect. Thank you, Stevie. I could probably talk about that a lot longer, but we are on a wrap on time. So thank you for being the first female we've interviewed for our series of female podcasts.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.